Welcome to the Gathering Greenhouse, a podcast to help us grow together.
Fantastic.
I'm Steve. This is David, and our friend in the corner giving me a round of applause is Matt. So you were asking earlier, am I nervous about the intro? No, I'm not. I feel like I've got it now. But last week, I will say, did you watch the intro? Okay, so they gave me a hard time.
I watched the whole podcast.
Did you?
Even?
Yeah, I didn't finish the whole. I didn't finish the whole thing.
You just watched the intro,
no,
and you're like, "Well, you got the intro, so I'm done.
No,
I'm out."
That's not what I did. But I don't remember exactly why I didn't finish. But I think it was just a time thing. Like
you
I had
just
something
watched
going
for
on.
the biscuits.
No,
and then you're like, okay.
It was really good. I thought they did a good job. I thought it was fun. It was interesting.
I thought it was way better than anything we've done.
I don't know. Could be. I didn't finish it. So
I mean, the whole biscuit thing was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Do you want me to bring some dehydrated things in here?
No, don't do that. No, I mean, it was interesting to watch them eat
Oh,
it.
okay.
I did finish that whole bag.
Oh, you did. Matt finished the whole bag.
That's disgusting.
That is disgusting. That's gross.
Yeah.
No, they gave me a hard time about me never getting the intro correct.
Right.
And what John, I don't think even realizes, he didn't actually say it correct.
On last week's podcast?
Yeah, he didn't.
No, I saw that too. Yeah.
He didn't do it right either.
And nobody called him on it.
Nobody called, because there was no one there who knew the intro to call him on it.
Come on, John.
Except maybe, Matt, were you there?
Yeah.
Did you notice that he did it wrong?
I did.
Okay.
I just didn't say
Matt, because Matt is a good friend. He just moved on with life. Yeah, so John, I don't know if he's going to watch this, but it was very close. It was a good intro, but it wasn't exact.
Not exact.
No.
Can you do it again right now and see if we get it nailed again?
Yeah.
All right, go.
Welcome to the Gathering Greenhouse, a podcast to help us grow together.
You have been practicing, haven't you?
No, I just
Steve
finally
gets up in the morning.
It's
He's looking in
finally
the mirror.
been trained to my memory now.
Nice. All right.
It took a while, but I got it.
Yeah, I feel like one of these days, but not today necessarily. We should break down the introduction
And talk about what
and because why it matters.
who wrote the introduction.
I don't know.
Okay,
I think John might have.
So it's probably John.
But like, just walk through each word, and this, this is because we talk about it every week about the introduction.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, why does it matter so much? Mm-hmm. And part of it is just because it's funny. But
so I'm gonna take a shot at it. So it's called the Greenhouse.
Well, wait, we're not. We said we're not gonna do that this week.
Okay, I don't.
Because last time you and I were together, we went 55 minutes.
Okay, so let's move.
A lot of people were complaining about that.
Oh, to you?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you got some complaints. So I don't have
Angry
biscuits
emails
this morning. I don't have a funny question, but I do have a game.
Oh, all right.
It's I'm using the David Rudd definition of a game, but I have a game,
which means nobody wins.
I have a game this morning. So I've told you this. I've been reading Mama Bear Apologetics.
Yep.
And I told you I listened to like the first 2 or 3 chapters, but it's different when you listen to it versus you're reading it. Mm-hmm. You're always kind of like, well, which chapter I'm on? You don't know, but I listened to a section of it, and I came back to you, and I complained about it for a second, where I'm like, I know it's called Mama Bear.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? Well, I was like, I know it's called Mama Bear Apologetics, but man, they talk about moms a lot. Like, as a dad listening to it, I'm like, am I going to be like totally left behind in this? Because they do. And to their defense, it's called Mama Bear Apologetics, and they're super passionate about moms.
And they're moms.
And they're
they
moms.
are moms.
Right. They're well,
that is their experience.
So actually, one of them is not a mom.
But that is their experience.
But she works with kids.
Right. Yep.
Are they moms?
Well, not all of them, but,
All right.
Matt's trying to make a funny.
So
anyway, yeah. So I was like, what's the hype about this book? I don't know, and it wasn't like any apologetics book.
Is this
I
the game?
had written. No,
this is a rotten game.
This is not a rotten game.
Okay.
This is my intro to it. This is where this came from, because I think it's really important, and I think you also think it's really important that we understand how to teach our kids to keep their faith. And to me, I'm super passionate about that too. Being a youth pastor and seeing what can come from that, but as a parent as well, of like, I just want to get better at that. So I've been listening to it, and I finally got past that mama stuff, and I'm now into the bear stuff where they're talking about the apologetics.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
You like it better now.
It's really good.
Good.
I would say it's really good. And they give you like concrete examples. It's reads more like apologetics book after you get past those like 3 intro chapters. So it's really good. So if you're a parent and you're watching, whether a mom or a dad, it's a great
or a
read.
grandparent.
That's where I was going next.
Aunt.
If you're
an uncle.
Yep, Matt, you're an uncle. You should read this, okay?
A cousin in one of those weird families where the cousins are 20 years older than the other cousins. So there's it's almost like an aunt-uncle relationship, but you're actually cousins.
Yep. I would dare to say...
Talking to you, Uncle Toby.
I would dare to say you don't even have to have kids in your life at all, and you'd get a lot out of it.
What if you're a teacher?
You've wonderful book for teachers.
Yeah.
Wonderful book for teachers. It's just a quality apologetics book.
Even gym teachers?
Yeah. It's a quality apologetics book, regardless. These ladies are they're passionate about it. They understand it. They know apologetics. They also are speaking to the next generation, which to me is it's a really well written book and refreshing in the light of that, because a lot of the great apologetics books are a little bit older, like the ones that I love at least. Yeah. So it's great. But this is where I'm going with this, because they say...
Well, hold on. I want to say 2 things real quick, then we'll get to your game. All right. So number 1, in regards to Mama Bear Apologetics.
Yeah.
I consistently say to people, we need to understand that what was convincing for us will not be convincing for the next generation. Yeah. So we do need a new...
School has changed.
Yeah, and we need a new kind of apologetics. And that's one of the reasons I like this book. Number 2... yes, they are moms, and so they write from that perspective. But it's important for us to realize. So I'm a preacher, right? That's probably first and foremost what I do. Almost all of my preaching is from the perspective of a dad, right, and a father, a man, all that. Most of my illustrations come out of my experience as a father, a husband, all that. It is very hard for me to do illustrations from the perspective of a mother.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for us to understand that most people who have gone to evangelical churches all their lives have 90% heard sermons from the pulpit from the perspective of fathers and husbands. Mm-hmm. And so when a book comes out that's from the perspective of moms and wives, but it seems to be the same kind of material, it feels a little odd to us at first, but man, it's really valuable to have that new perspective. So anyways, there you go.
It is. Right. It is. But as you're saying that, it just made me think, I don't know, maybe this exists, but there's, a gap here of Papa Bear apologetics. Maybe there's a spinoff that could happen, but I think,
Well, honestly, I think there is a difference in how moms do apologetics and how dads do apologetics. Yeah. I think
their apologetics are solid, though. A dad could use them.
Well, sure, but understand that generally speaking, moms are the relational side, dads are the experiential side, right? And so what a father does is a lot more just doing stuff with their kids, and in the process of doing stuff, there's learning going on, there's teaching going on, there's really foundations of truth being laid just in the process of doing stuff together. Whereas it's the mom that's probably going to more often than not be the one that sits down and has conversations that are ongoing. I'm not saying it's only that way, but generally speaking, I think that's one of the reasons Mama Bear Apologetics is so powerful.
I agree. And you know what my favorite time to talk to my kids about this kind of stuff is?
In the car.
It is. It's exactly what it is.
Well, I was going to say turn off the radio, but you don't really do. People don't do radios anymore. They just have their phones on Bluetooth and whatnot.
I do the radio.
Okay, yeah, we'll turn it off.
Okay, I do.
Right when your kids are in the car, turn off the radio.
Yep. Okay, so the game this morning, and I will allow you to ask 2 questions here, but I'll give that. So it is, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? So this was a discussion starter for kids about.
Okay. I don't understand how this is a game.
It is, because we're seeing where you land on it.
Is there a right answer?
For you, there's a right answer, but everyone's answer may be a little bit different.
All right. So if I could ask God one question.
So I will, if you want to, I will allow one inquisitive question and then one deep question. So if you want to go 2, because I think that the questions that I have for God that I'm actually really curious about have nothing to do with faith.
All right.
More the physical world.
Is this if I today met up with God at Panera?
Yeah.
And I could ask him a question.
Exactly.
Versus when I get to heaven, I want to ask a question, right?
Well, do you think the questions are going to change once you get to heaven?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, before you've experienced heaven, he's sitting outside
Right.
the gates. Like I know there's no gates in heaven. But
My clarification is, I'm wondering, is this a question that I'm asking a question that's going to help me moving forward, or is it a question that I don't really? It's just clarifying something for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all right. So if it's me like today sitting down in Panera, my one question for God.
Yeah.
What's the next Powerball number?
Okay. That's a pretty good one. I'm not gonna lie.
You didn't see that coming,
No, I did not
ya?
see that coming, and that's a really good question.
All right.
You want to hear? So is that the only one? Do you want a deep question?
No,
Do you want
I'll
a
have
deeper?
better questions,
That's why I thought like it's hard to do this and not have a fun question to God. Do you want a second to think?
I'm gonna actually
tell
do
you
two
mine.
questions. So here, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So the first, the fun question is, why don't teeth heal themselves? Like almost everything else in our body, you get sick, you heal yourself. You get cut, you heal yourself. You break a bone, it heals. But our teeth, which are very important in life, you get a cavity and that's it. That tooth could just kill itself. Be gone.
Okay.
So that's my question for God. And then my deep one is, I was a little afraid to come up with a deep one around you because I thought you might question it or throw me off. But here's my deep question. I'm going to go with it anyway. Why don't you play a more active role in human faith, like currently? Like why is it so much based on humans? Why is it so much based on the Bible and history and all that? Why don't you play a more active role in human faith?
Yeah, like I wish God would do something like actually show up here on earth.
Oh yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Right? Like actually show up and like walk around and be present.
And then we like, ha ha! That's what I would do.
He actually did that.
Oh. He went, ha ha!
No, he actually showed up and walked around.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. See,
I'm saying in modern day faith.
Right, because we're more important than those people 2,000 years ago.
I kind of knew you were going to say these exact things. That's why I was afraid to bring it up. But, it would be nice. I mean, I'm not saying that, like, that's what I need in my life. There was a time in my life where I kind of wanted God to show up. But that's where faith comes in. And you're right. Are we more important? We always think we're more important than previous generations. We know more than previous generations. So we have a tendency to go there. But that's my question.
Yeah. All right.
I'd like to just see how God might answer that. I mean, I know there's a good reason, and I could come up with some of my own reasons, but I'd like to see how God would answer it.
Right. I think honestly, my not super deep question would be, hey, can you just give me a heads up on when the end times actually are?
I thought about that. I don't want to know.
Like how close are we really?
I don't want to know.
Because there are days when I'm like, oh man, we have got to be like right there.
Yeah, if we were right there, how would that change your life? Would you like book that trip you've been really wanting to do?
No. In a lot of ways, it wouldn't change my life a lot. I think probably, just as a human, I would say there would be more of an urgency to what I do, even though I know that's a bad reflection, right? Well, why aren't you urgent now? Well, okay, but it is life. What it is, right?
That's all you have to say, life, right?
Yeah, so that'd be one of my questions. I think my deep question would be just, and I don't know how I would ask it. I want to think about how to ask it. Because generally I like to just ask questions that get people talking,
right?
And I what I'd want to know and have maybe a better understanding of is why do people who claim to be Christians but act unrighteously get a platform?
Yeah, no, that's a really good.
And what I'm really looking for here is, in a sense, he has control over all things. So I know he allows that, and that's part of his plan. But in another sense, my question is, like, is that demonically influenced?
Yeah.
Like, because that can't be driving people towards God. So there's just that whole question of why do people who claim to be Christians but act unrighteously get a platform? Yeah,
that's a good question.
Yeah,
that's a really good question. And
that wasn't much of a game, Steve.
I know.
My games are much better than that.
much better. Much better. True. Okay. So let's get into some Sunday questions, unless there's anything else.
I feel like we should play a game like, let's do the Mount Rushmore of Mount Rushmores again.
That was probably the worst game played on the podcast.
Best game.
All right.
Best game?
He knows where his toast is buttered.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He also plays Dungeons and Dragons.
I do.
So, I don't know. I don't know what that means. It doesn't really mean anything.
Why do you hate people who play Dungeons and Dragons?
I'm just giving that as a preference
is there
for
a
everyone.
name?
I didn't mean any. There's no disrespect for the Dungeons and Dragoners.
Is there a name for Dungeons and Dragons players?
D&D?
I don't know off the top of my head.
How can there not be though? Right? You'd think they'd have some secret name for themselves.
Dragonites.
Like Voyagers or. I don't know what else you'd call it. So is a dungeon and where prisoners are kept, or is it like the basement?
It's in our dining room, actually.
Okay.
I think
in the dining room.
Yeah, because it did. I think most of the time used to be played in basements.
Yep.
So, all right, we better get to our questions.
All right. So the question here is we're still in our Minor Prophets. Sermon series called The Last Word. And could you maybe just explain that for a second? Because you would do it in your intro, but is it the actual final word, or is it the final section in the book that inspires you to give the last word?
So yeah, it's kind of like one of those phrases that has multiple meanings. Right. So there's really three meanings for it. The first is these are the last 12 books in the Old Testament.
Okay.
Right. And in a way, because
these are the final words before Jesus came.
Right. Well, before a long period of silence.
Right, yeah.
So yes, they are the last words, and they really represent the last words of God to people. So there are actually books that are written, the historical books that are written during the same period of time. So you've got your the ends of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles are during this period of time. You've got like Ezra and Nehemiah during this period of time, Esther, Daniel, all those things. But those are more historical books. And this is the prophetic books are actually God speaking to people. So it's God's last words in the last days of Judah and Israel. All right, so that's meaning number one. Meaning number two, we're really focusing on the end of each book, because you can't do a whole book in one sermon. I mean, you can, but you can't get the whole thing. So we're really drilling down on the end, because it's at the end of most of these books that you really understand the heartbeat of God. Okay. So the pattern in most of the minor prophets is they begin by saying something bad is happening, or something bad is about to happen, and then they explain why. So it's because you've done this, this, and this. Yeah. And then they say, now here's what you need to do in response, and it's almost always you need to repent, return to God. And then and here's what God is going to do for you. And that's the last word. And I think it's cool that at the end of most of them is this really kind of fun last word. Like we'll see one this week when we get into the end of Amos. Yeah. So that's meaning 2. And then meaning 3 is that this isn't the last word at all. Because the cool thing about it is you have this last word of Israel, you have this last word of Judah, and then silence for 400 years. Yeah. And so it feels like, well, that was it. That was the end. That was the last word. And then Jesus. Right. And it's just a really great reminder to us that wherever we are, whatever's going on, even though it feels like, something significant has ended or finished or it's done, that's not the last word. There's always another chapter that's yet to be written. Okay. And so that's why we call it the last word. All right. Very good. Good explanation of that. Okay. So we are in the last word. We were talking about, we were in Amos this last Sunday. Yep. And the question is, why is God so angry in the book of Amos? Yeah. I mean, but what minor prophet book is written, is God not angry in it to some extent? Well, and it's being written, like prophecy is being written to saying, you guys are screwing up. Yes. Yeah. So in a lot of them, it is God saying, hey, judgment is coming because you've done this. Yeah. But in Amos, it's pretty straightforward. I hate your religious feasts. Yeah. Right? I detest what you're doing. When you sing, it makes me sick. So that's pretty strong language that you don't see in all of the other minor prophets. Right. So can we talk about that language just for a moment here? So, when you read prophetic books, there's a lot of style that it's written in that can be, very illustrative. Is that a word? Illustrative? Yep.
So how do we tell the difference between like the way that someone is writing in a poetic manner and then something that is like actually coming from God? What's a way to determine that?
Yeah. So number one, when you're looking at symbolic language, there are some clues that it's symbolic, like the word like.
Yeah.
It will be like this.
Yeah.
Okay, well then it's not going to actually be that. It's going to be like that. That's imagery. Another way is, does it make sense? Right? So if you're reading something in the Bible and it just makes sense the way it's written, it's like, okay, well that makes sense. Then it probably is, that's it, right? Whereas if you read something, it's like, well, that doesn't make sense at all. This is really confusing. All right, so maybe there's some symbolism going on here, and so that's another way to know. Sometimes maybe you need to read outside sources and say, tell me more about this. I want to know more about this. But generally, because these are prophetic books, you can kind of anticipate that there's going to be some symbolism there. So you just know that. However, when we get to like this passage in Amos, I think we just read it as it is. When God says, I hate this, I detest this, it makes me really mad, just read it as that.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't say it makes me feel like I'm mad. He just says, no, I don't like this. I hate this. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
To get back to the original question, which is why is God so angry? I would say a lot of times what we get angry at reveals what we love. Okay, and this is true for all of us. No one, let's say,
like our kids.
All right, let me tell a story. Can I tell a story?
Yeah.
All right. So many years ago, when I lived in Michigan, so before I was here, many years ago, my son and daughter went to a school, right? And the school was in our church. So it was a Christian school in our church. And I was working at Panera that day, which I often work at Panera. And I get a phone call from the gym teacher, and he says, "Hey, I wanted to call you and let you know that one of the older boys in the school, because it's a small Christian school, so you have like high school boys, middle school boys, all in the same area sometime. One of the this one Liam's in 7th grade maybe. One of the high school boys had attacked him and kicked him very, very hard in a very uncomfortable place.
Okay.
And so the dad or the gym teacher tells me this. And my immediate response as a logical and reasonable father who has had a middle school boy was, well, what did Liam do? Right? Nobody's going to just do that out of the blue. Well, what did Liam do? And he says, well, actually, Liam didn't do anything. And, I've talked to lots of people that, so this is one of those situations where this kid just did this out of the blue. No reason for it, just simply to be mean to a much, much smaller kid. Like, all right, well, okay. I mean, what do I do at that point? So I got to school to pick up the kids at the end of the day. And both of our kids come out crying, right? So my daughter, who's a freshman, my son, because they're so upset about what's happened at school that day. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Well, and they're like, well, the kid who did this isn't getting in trouble. What? So I go in. And I'm like, I need to, and so this is one of those. So
like they didn't do anything to the kid. He didn't get.
So this is the thing. Both of my kids, I didn't know this. I thought this was kind of cool. They were talking to Liam's father-in-law about me. And he told me this later. He's like, neither of your kids has ever seen you lose your cool. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. All right. Because I'm generally a pretty level person. This day, Marianne will tell you,
Papa Bear
is the one day in her life where she was scared that I was actually going to lose my mind. So we go walking into the school, and I go into the school office, and I don't even stop. I walk right past the secretary. I walk right past everybody, and I just say, and I name the name of the principal. Is he in there? Yep. Is anybody with him? Nope. But you can't go in. I'm like, I'm going in. And I just walk right in with Mary. And I say, we're talking right now. What's going on? This guy already told me Liam didn't do anything, didn't have this coming. What's going on here? And he says, well, and this guy, he's just Mr. Squeamish, right? I don't really know what happened yet. And I haven't, so we don't want to jump to conclusions. I need to, investigate. And I'm like, but this guy already did the He already talked to kids. He talked to everybody. He told me, this is what happened. Well, I know, but I need to watch the security videos and see if I can figure out. And I'm like, why do you have to do that? You already know. And he just keeps making excuse after excuse piling on and says, well, those kids were there. There was a little bit of horseplay going on. And I'm like, that's not, and he did like one after another.
Right.
And then he admits that he actually has already watched the security videos. Right. And he's
so
like,
he saw it.
Right. So now it's like, okay, so you've already lied to me.
Yeah.
And this is where I kind of lose my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you need to do something about this. This kid needs to be, suspended. I don't know what your protocol is here.
Right.
But I'm losing my mind at this point. Now, here's the thing. I don't think anybody would fault me for this.
Yeah.
Right? My son has been attacked kind of brutally.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything. Everybody there said he didn't do anything. The kid who did it to him said later, he said to us later, he told the teacher at the moment, no, Liam didn't do anything, but his friend did. So I attacked Liam instead because his friend was a lot bigger than Liam.
Right.
Right. So I'm losing my mind about this. Why? Well, because you're like, you've completely lost the script. Why are we talking about this again? The reason is because I love my son.
Yeah.
And my love for my son drove me to some really serious anger. Really serious. Like, Marianne literally thought that my husband might jump over the table and strangle this guy right now. Because our anger reveals what we love.
Yeah.
And the more intensely we love someone, the more intense our anger will be when that someone is mistreated.
Yeah.
So, back to Amos.
Yes.
So, in Amos 5, God is angry. And his anger is intense because of his intense love. Mm-hmm. See, God loves those who nobody else loves.
Yeah.
And God loves the downtrodden, the oppressed, the poor, those who are considered to be nothing. What's really interesting is that Amos is one of them. Amos is an insignificant guy. He's a shepherd, but he doesn't own the sheep. He just takes care of them for the owner. And he works in the vineyards, but he doesn't own them. He just works there. He's like a day laborer.
Yeah.
So he's like the most insignificant guy. And now God sends him up to these really powerful people in Israel to say, hey, God's really angry. So the whole book it's about God's anger because of God's love.
Yeah.
Because God loves these people so much. And when they are being mistreated and abused, it really makes him angry. So in his anger, something important is being revealed about his love.
Yeah.
And so, why is he so angry? Because people that he loves are being mistreated and abused and not taken care of, and that makes him angry.
Yeah.
And it should, because he's a father.
Yeah. And it's a relatable story that you just said, because everyone would say, you were angry because of something that happened to your child.
Yeah.
Almost everyone can relate to that.
Yep.
And in the same sense, if you put a human characteristic on God's motives, it helps us understand, why was God so angry? He was angry because he had a good reason to be angry.
Well, God reveals himself to us as a father.
Yeah.
Now, he's not a literal father, but he's using language that we can understand. And he recognizes, hey, y'all know what it's like when a father gets angry, right? When a father gets angry because his children are being mistreated, look out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what's happening in Amos.
Yeah. Well, good answer on that one.
I didn't know I was going to tell that long story, but it just popped into my head as I was talking. I was like, oh, that is a good story. Tell a fun story. Yeah. So story time with Grandpa Dave. I'm not a grandpa. That is not an announcement.
Wait, breaking news. That's all we heard today. David's grandpa. Okay.
No, not for years and years to come.
You never know.
You never know.
So question number 2. I know we should help others, but what about God helps those who help themselves, which you hear from time to time.
Yeah. God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah. It's kind of the, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, comment. It's kind of similar. The, get a job.
Yeah. Yes. It is physically impossible to pull oneself up by their own bootstraps.
Well, true.
Which is that? But that's,
what are bootstraps? I'm trying to even picture what a bootstrap is.
So actually, that statement originally was designed to show the inability.
You can't do that.
It's like you're asking people to do something that they can't do.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. So I think actually Benjamin Franklin is the one who originated the quote, God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe. Might have been like part of his Poor Richard's Almanac thing. I'm not
It's
sure.
not from the Bible. That's what you're saying.
No, it's not from the Bible. It's not.
Wow.
So, but I think that's actually a good question because
Well, we do have a role in it. I mean, it makes sense, right? But to the same token, it's like, well, there's life circumstances, there's other things involved in there, so it's not as cut and dry as often we want to make it.
Right. I think, there is no hard and fast rule that says these are the people you help, these are the people you don't.
Yeah.
But there are clues in the Bible, that things that say if a person's not willing to work, they shouldn't eat. Which is to say, you don't keep helping someone who's unwilling to help themselves. The biblical charity is not just giving stuff away. It is assisting people, empowering them, equipping them, giving them the resources they need to get from A to B. And if they're not willing to take those resources and go, you don't keep funneling them that way, right? So Proverbs says a lot about this, right?
Yeah, Proverbs has a lot. For sure.
So I think it's a good question.
I feel like some of the New Testament things that they struggled through when the church started growing and, hey, we got all these needs. Who's going to take care of these needs? Like, there's a lot of good information there of like, how do you actually process that? And who is responsible for who? Who should we be taking care of?
Right. You've mentioned the book before, When Helping Hurts.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a really good book.
It is.
That talks about how sometimes our well-intentioned attempts to help can actually do more harm.
It does. And that book is written on from the perspective of the person helping, not necessarily how you're hurting, how like helping someone actually hurts them. It's the like coming into the mentality of like, hey, we're going to help you with this thing. And like the community actually doesn't even need that.
Right.
And like it's like giving away like the Tom's thing, giving away free shoes. Well, what about every single person who's there selling shoes? You just destroyed that economy.
Right.
Wait,
so Tom's is bad?
There's a lot that has come out about Tom's. And I don't know what Tom's philosophy is anymore, but I think that they've since changed that. But there's a lot of other companies that do the exact same thing. And on paper, it sounds great, doesn't it? Wow, I buy a pair of shoes and someone else gets a pair of shoes. Like it's a good thing.
It's kind of like when you go into a restaurant or like a counter service place. They're like, hey, do you want to upgrade your, to upgrade $1 for, and then they name some charity.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, oh, because if you say no, you look like a jerk.
Yeah.
But if you say yes, you know what's happening? They're taking that money, they're donating it, and they're getting the tax write-off for it.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that. I thought that they were just getting the credit. See, and also I'm kind of like, well, like, so like a place like Walmart is like, hey, we did all these great things. And I'm like, well, no, someone came and donated stuff. But I'm also thinking about, well, the Gathering does that to some extent too, where we don't necessarily take the credit for it, but we say, we always, like this Sunday, you actually talked a little bit about that specifically of like, we are part of a church with a lot of generous people because like the church itself can't be generous. The people have to be the ones who are generous.
Yeah. And I try very hard to walk a line because I think it's great to reinforce to people, hey, what you're doing is good, so keep doing it.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, some of you who aren't giving, I want you to start giving today. Right. Yeah. And so there's a line there.
Yeah.
And so we try really hard to balance it. But one of the things we do here is we work really hard to make sure that anybody we're partnering with is an organization that is equipping people, not just enabling people. And so we want to make sure that we're doing
Which is
that.
hard to do.
It is hard to do.
It's much easier just to write a check.
Yeah, and there are times when we've said we're not going to work with this organization anymore because we're not sure they're actually helping people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good question though. Yeah, we have to be, I think, just careful. Although let's maybe wrap it up here.
Yeah,
it's always better to err on the side of generosity.
Yeah,
right. So like there have been times when I've given money to some guy in the street who's panhandling. Yeah, and I know there's a 80% chance he's gonna not use that money well. Right. But it's like, yeah, you know what? I've got it though. Yeah. And I don't need it. Yeah. And maybe he will use it well. Yeah. And so God's not going to be mad at me for being generous. Right. Yeah, for sure. And I do that. I do that as well to some extent, not necessarily with the person on the street corner, but when someone walks in or I encounter someone, they're asking me like, it's like when Matt has his hat out. It's easier to say yes or no. I need some money for a sandwich. Right, when Matt, and I'm like, well,
Matt, have you gotten paid recently? Like, what did you, it's easier just to either say yes or no, not to ask questions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's why for me personally, instead of maybe giving money to that person on the street, I donate to an organization that helps homeless people.
And I don't always give to everybody on the street.
I think both philosophies are fine. Both, unless like something is happening. But it's easy to give that money. It's harder to find out, well, what's going on with why are there people on the street corners? What are they actually doing and all of that? Like, that's hard because that takes work.
Yeah. So what's ideal is that guy on the street, instead of just handing him money, you say, hey, let's go to McDonald's together.
Yeah.
And you sit down and you have a meal together and you talk, and maybe out of that conversation you say, hey, maybe there's something else I can do to help you.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you're just walking by and it's like, you know what,
absolutely.
I've got a couple extra bucks in my
messy,
pocket.
It's hard. It's difficult. It is. And I don't want to say you should do it one way or another.
Yep.
It's ultimately your money, right? And you can be right with God to make the decision on that.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of it comes back to my internal intentions, right? Am I having this conversation just so that I can justify keeping my stuff for myself?
Right.
If that's the case, then you probably need to just give it away.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the example of like when helping hurts, of like, if you have a good suspicion that that person may be using that money to, in a bad way,
getting drugs.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't do that if that's what your conviction is. But you need to find out. You need to ask those questions. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, maybe here's a good rule of thumb. I just thought of this.
Okay.
So if I'm walking down the street and some guy's panhandling and says, hey, got a couple bucks. And I have a couple bucks.
Yeah.
But I think to myself, if I give these to him, he will probably use these to harm himself. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to give them to him. Now, at that moment, I wonder if we should say, okay, I made the decision not to give it to him because I didn't think it's a good idea. I have to give this away now.
Yeah.
I need to go find a place where I can give this where it's going to be productive. Otherwise, that was just
to help
an excuse.
With that problem.
Yeah.
Help with that specific problem.
So just interesting.
It is. And we could talk about that.
This is supposed to be a shorter podcast.
We could talk about that specific topic for a while because honestly, there's a lot of that type of stuff that's getting worse and worse, specifically like West Coast areas where I've read and saw some things that have blown my mind of what's going on out there. But we won't talk about that.
It's worse than you think.
I would imagine, because usually when information starts trickling in, you're like, that's weird. Why is that going on? And I start reading more and more about it. I'm like, whoa, like policies and different things that are coming.
Whatever you're hearing and seeing, until you go and see it.
Yeah, that's a whole, I could talk about that for a while. Yeah. So let's move on here to the last question I have scheduled for this, which is, why is it so important for Christians to serve? First off, what do we mean by serve in that?
So actually...
Is that like in the church? Is that outside the church?
Yeah, so I actually thought this was going to be the question we spent the most amount of time on.
All right. There's still a chance that it could be.
I don't think we need to, but... Yeah. So I'm gonna take the word serve and define that. Just it can be in and out of the church.
Okay. Simply
using our resources for others' good.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that. I think there's an element to which serving probably should be sacrificial.
I like that. I think it's a very interesting point.
Because if it's not sacrificial, then is it really serving, right? Is it just an exchange? If it's not
sacrificial, it's also not tax deductible.
Well, I mean, maybe.
I'm just saying. I think that's
not just money.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just talking in the sense of how does the government define giving to a charitable organization? Well, you can't get anything from it,
right?
So in that sense, I completely agree. And being someone who has organized many service opportunities for students and adults, it's always the ones that require more sacrifice that are more difficult to fill.
Right.
When you don't physically see the person you're helping, or it's not. So I think that's an interesting point that you make.
So really quick answers to that question. Jesus served more than anybody. And if we want to be like Jesus, then we also should serve more than anybody. So that's one really quick, simple answer. Another really quick, simple answer is Jesus gave us 3 commands, right? Love God, love your neighbor, love one another. Love your neighbor is all about serving. And he defined that because in Luke, when he answered that question, somebody said, well, who's my neighbor? And he defined that by telling the story of the Good Samaritan. So if we're truly to love our neighbor as Jesus told us to, then we must serve them. So those are super quick answers. Let me give a deeper, more kind of biblical theological answer. All right, so go back to Genesis. Genesis 2. End of Genesis 2, you have male and female, Adam and Eve, and God puts them together. And we have at the very end of the last word of Genesis chapter 2 is this really beautiful picture that the man and his wife, the two become one, yada, yada, yada. Everything's perfect. Now, why is everything perfect? Because you have two people who are living in harmony, perfect harmony. There's no sin. And harmony means different together.
Yeah.
Right? So unison is fine, but unison is not as great as harmony. If you listen to a song and everybody's singing the exact same notes at the exact same time, okay, that's nice. But if they're singing in perfect harmony, it's like, that's really beautiful. Same is true with life. So you've got perfect harmony, and perfect harmony is different together. Okay? Now, what happens? Well, chapter 3 happens, and sin happens, and no longer do you have perfect harmony. You have messed up, right? You still have different, but now you have different not together. And that's characterized in verses like 15 through 18, where God is saying, here, this is what it's going to look like, is you guys are going to be at odds with each other now. Adam and Eve, you're going to be trying to control each other, and you're not going to like each other. And that really kind of describes the human condition. Now, we're no longer different together, we're different alone. And fighting for ourselves and trying to do our own thing. I know you're wondering, how's this going to get? When's it going to get to serving on this? So let me get to serving. Yeah. So Adam and Eve's harmony in the garden. The reason it's so beautiful is because each of them are good at different things, right? They don't have the same gifts. They don't have the same abilities. And so harmony requires us to, work really hard where we're gifted. Right? Take the lead. Work really hard where you're gifted. But then also to submit and trust and rely on in the areas I'm not gifted. So let's say Adam was really good at finding the most ripe bananas. So that means in their relationship, that's what he did. It's like, okay, I'm going to go find the most ripe bananas. And let's say Eve was really good at bathing the porcupines. Right? And so she did that. And in perfect harmony, Adam doesn't come walking over and say, Eve, you're doing that wrong, right? You should bathe the porcupines different, because he humbly submits and trusts and relies on her to do what she's good at. Yeah. She does the same for him, right? This is perfect harmony. Sin ruins that. Now, this isn't just a marriage picture. It's not just a man and wife picture. It's a picture of humanity. All of us are made differently, right? We're all created with different gifts, different abilities. And in a perfect world, in a perfectly harmonious world, we would all live in this place where I would do what I'm good at, you would do what you're good at. Yeah. And we would trust and humbly submit to and rely on each other to do what each other's good at. And we wouldn't get in the way and mess with it. That would be perfect, right? Yeah. And in doing that, we would be serving one another. Right? You would serve me with your gifts. I would serve you with my gifts. Unfortunately, what happens is sin messes all that up. So now what we have is people who are, because of where life has taken them, and sometimes it's their own choices, sometimes it's the choices of others, whatever it may be, because of where life has taken them, they are unable to use their gifts to serve society. And so what's needed is for me to say, I need to help that person get to the place where they can use their gifts, where we can get closer to that perfect harmony. So service is really that. Service is me saying, I have these gifts. I can use these gifts to help that person get to the place where they can use their gifts. So you can see this isn't just a church thing. It's not just a religion thing. It's not just a Jesus thing. It's an everything thing. That if all of us thought that way and lived that way, we could find much better harmony in life. Yeah. Is if I said, I'm going to use what I have to help others get to where they need to be so they can use what they have. So if you say, why should people serve? Well, that's it, because God created us that way. Yeah. And I'm done.
Okay. Good enough. I mean, I understand that concept, but
Steve's going to have to rewatch this.
I'm going to have to rewatch it, but the question is, if someone doesn't want to use their gifts to help other people, by choice, not by circumstances, where does that fall into it because
Well, that's what we call sin.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
And that's bad for them. It's bad for everybody else.
Yeah.
And anytime we step out of God's design, that is literally sin.
Yeah. So if you're just like, I don't want to I'd rather just do nothing.
I'd rather be, only serve myself.
Yeah. Rather only serve myself.
Well, that's what gets us in the mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
all right.
Great. Well, thanks for spending some time with us today. And I hope you learned something and can apply that to your life.
Do we need to create like an outro?
Yeah.
That's as significant as our intro?
That's probably a good idea.
What if you just said the intro backwards?
Hey, well, thanks for joining us at the Gathering Greenhouse. I hope you've grown
Together. It's like a podcast help us grow together, right? So together grow.
Just say it backwards.
Help to
That's really hard to do.
podcast a greenhouse gathering the two. Welcome.
There you go. I guess that's it. Have a great day.